All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to Mondays with Mike. It is Monday, the Monday before Thanksgiving, of course, and we have, well, you know what? Not too bad of a week's forecast leading up to Thanksgiving. Today, we're going to keep an eye on Fox Rad Radar today, and you should have the Fox 26 weather app on your phone because there is going to be a chance for some thunderstorms across the area. In fact, the National Weather Service actually has us under a slight chance, slightly elevated chance for seeing a couple of severe storms today as a cold front comes in. Now, that front is going to give us a pretty windy day tomorrow, and that'll be followed by a couple of cold mornings. Coming up Wednesday morning looks cold, Thanksgiving morning looks cold, and I have like a shine on my face. Nothing I can do about that. So we do have some chilly air coming up. The Thanksgiving forecast, we'll talk about it in more detail here in a minute, but suffice it to say, this is living up to all the expectations of what holidays in Houston are usually all about, which is a forecast that's uncertain and difficult. So that's just the way things work out. All right, the first thing I wanted to talk about here, guys, with you is the phenomenon, the practice of naming winter storms. Now, we all know that hurricanes are named, and that goes back to, it was first instituted in the year 1953, and it had been done informally before then among forecasters, but the naming convention began in 1953 mostly because it helped people keep track of which storm was which. For example, if you had three hurricanes, or maybe you had two hurricanes and a tropical storm, and one of them was in the Gulf and another one was in the Caribbean and another one was in the Atlantic Ocean, it would have been difficult to, the only way to talk about it would have been to say this storm, that storm, that storm, or to give latitude and longitude coordinates and things like that. And so it really facilitated people sort of keeping track of where these storms were when they were given a name. Now, they also could have been potentially given letters. They could have been called Storm A and Storm B and Storm C, or Storm number one and Storm number two. That definitely could have been done. But I think, if you think about it, like referring to Hurricane Ike is sort of different than calling it Hurricane 2008 I or something like that. So that's one thing. Another thing is that hurricanes and tropical storms are generally confined, at least the center of the low is confined to a very small area. In a hurricane, we call that area the eye. Even in a tropical storm, it may not have an eye, but it definitely has a well-defined center of circulation that's over a relatively small area. And so it's very easy to point to something exactly and say that is Tropical Storm Mike, or that is Hurricane, Susie, or whatever. That's Hurricane, Jose. It's easy to point to that. Now, here's the problem with wintertime weather. So back in February of 2021, most of you know that we had a huge, epic, deadly freeze across the state of Texas. And it wasn't just Texas. It affected a lot of the country, snow and ice and really cold weather. It was historic for Texas because of the problem with the electrical grid, of course. The problem is that people are calling it Winter Storm Uri. And that is not a thing. So where does it come from? Well, it does not come from the National Weather Service. It doesn't come from the National Hurricane Center. It doesn't come from NOAA. It doesn't come from any authority other than a TV station, a TV network called the Weather Channel. All right. The Weather Channel made it up. Now, I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm not criticizing the Weather Channel. I'm just saying that they have succeeded, I think, unfortunately, in getting this sort of into the American lexicon. And there's a couple of reasons why this is a problem. First thing is it confuses the message. The National Weather Service does not use names for winter storms. In fact, NOAA has told their forecasters in the National Weather Service to purposely avoid using those names. So I don't know why I'm getting this weird light on me. Um, they've asked their forecasters to actually avoid using the names for the sake of not confusing everybody. So why can't we name winter storms? Well, for one, winter storms are constantly morphing, changing, reforming their areas of circulation, and they're also very large systems without a center that you could really track. Like I said, hurricanes have a definite center of circulation. In fact, the hurricane hunters fly right into it. You can pinpoint where the lowest pressure is in the hurricane, and then there's a very tightly packed area of winds near the eye, which we call the eye wall, and then it gradually gets weaker outside of that eye, and then as you go farther away, it gets much weaker. Winter storms are not like that at all. Mid-latitude systems have a wide wind field that might stretch 1,000 miles. And yes, they do have a sort of a center of circulation, but there's no eye or anything like that. There's no eye wall. And the way these storms create fronts, typically you have a warm front that comes in on the east side of an area of low pressure in the wintertime, and you have a cold front that drags in on the west or the southwest side of it. And as that wraps around, once you have a mature winter storm that's been going for a couple of days, you end up with these complicated scenarios. Like you get an occluded cold front, which is where the cold front catches up to the warm front. That's called an occlusion. And then along that occlusion, you could have a new area of low pressure form. We call it the triple point, where you have the joining of a warm front and the cold front and the occluded front. You could have a new area of low pressure form there. So it raises the question, like, where's the winter storm? What are you talking about? What if one area of low pressure forms and like moves down out of Canada? And this happens. Area of low pressure moves down out of Canada. A new area of low pressure forms south of that low along the cold front. The initial low weakens, and then this new low continues and gets stronger. Which one's the storm? If we call that winter storm Thor or whatever weird names they come up with, no offense, Weather Channel. If you call that winter storm Thor, which one is Thor? Okay, is the whole thing still winter storm Thor, or is it is the first one Thor and then the next one is Zeus or whatever? It's not a thing. And unfortunately, the Weather Channel is so good at their marketing that they have convinced people that this is a real thing. It isn't. And so, if you hear people using the term, I'm not going to yell at somebody for using it. You can call things whatever you want to call them. But as journalists and as forecasters and meteorologists and as a news station, you're not going to hear me or anybody here discuss a winter area of low pressure and give it a name. Now, all that being said, storms generally are named for where they hit, when they hit, the areas that were affected. I mean, just for example, there was the March 93 superstorm. Okay, that was a famous one, the March 93 superstorm. It was an area of low pressure that formed actually close to Texas. It was sort of out in the Gulf of Mexico, rapidly intensified, moved across Florida, brought like some hurricane force winds. It pulled down just a huge area of cold air behind it. And so you had a massive freeze. You had very high winds across much of the country, like across the southern U.S. and across eventually up the East Coast. I mean, it was a whopper of a storm, Texas too. So that was March of 1993, and it wasn't called Hurricane Jupiter or whatever. It was called the March 93 superstorm after the fact. Okay, after the event had already happened. The 2021 storm that unfortunately Governor Abbott keeps calling Winter Storm Uri, even though it was not Winter Storm Uri. There's no name given to the storm. I don't know if there's been a consistent name given to it historically. I call it the President's Day freeze because that's when it hit. You had Sunday was Valentine's Day. Monday was President's Day, which is technically Washington's birthday, I know. But Monday was President's Day, and that's when we dropped, to 16 degrees in the morning. And then the next morning, 13 degrees. So I call it the President's Day freeze. I've heard other people just refer to it as the Great Texas Freeze or the Texas Freeze of 2021, the February Freeze of 2021. And I think all those are fine because those are looking at it from a historic point of view. It's kind of like, think about like if you were looking at something else in history, like World War I or something like that. Like while it was being fought, people didn't say like, oh, I'm in World War I. It was called that from a historical perspective. Like at the time, they just called it the Great War. So it's kind of the same thing with this. Like while it was happening, you would never say, it didn't make any sense to say, oh my gosh, the power's knocked out because of Winter Storm Uri. No, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So we need to just make sure everybody knows that this is a Weather Channel invention. Now, I looked some stuff up. There's actually a really good Wikipedia article on this. And in the article, they do mention some of these things like the 1993 superstorm. Well, they call it the storm of the century. That's another thing they call it, storm of the century. There's the great snow of 1717 that hit the American colonies in Virginia and up to New England. There was the schoolhouse blizzard of 1888 and the Columbus Day storm, the Halloween blizzard, stuff like that. But they weren't named at the time. Now, it's also interesting that some TV stations have experimented with naming storms. Apparently, WFSB in Connecticut, WLUK in Wisconsin have experimented doing these things back in the 70s and 80s. But it's really the Weather Channel that did this. And so it's for them. I'm not going to call it it's a gimmick. Not a gimmick. It's marketing. It's marketing and it's weather entertainment. And again, I'm not criticizing anything they do, but I'm saying that think about it. Would you be more interested in watching a show or tuning into their program if there was a bold Winter Storm Uri, or would it be more interesting to say big winter storm? Yeah, obviously, like giving it this name makes it sound more urgent. It makes it sound like something you'd want to watch. Doesn't change what it is, though, right? And it doesn't change the fact that that isn't what it's called by the government or by anybody else besides the Weather Channel, which is one organization. So it is for ratings, no doubt about it. There's absolutely no doubt it's for ratings. Has it been effective? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I will tell you that I'm very proud of our own weather network within the Fox family, which is Fox Weather. Okay. Fox Weather. Now, yes, we are Fox 26 Weather, but the corporation, Fox Corp, has Fox Weather, which is based in New York City, and they are every bit as good as the Weather Channel. From everything that I've seen, they are far less manic and hyper than the Weather Channel. They are very professional. They have reporters out in the field that are covering hurricanes and winter storms and things like that. They have not leapt to any sort of gimmicks like naming winter storms. And so I would definitely recommend that you check that out. You can download their app, which is called Fox Weather. We have our own app, Fox 26 Weather, which is specific to our area. But if you're going to be doing any traveling across the country, or they even have this cool thing where you could if you're planning an event, you could put that event in the calendar in the app, and then it'll like give you updates, leading up to that event. If there's anything going on, even if the event's months into the future, it'll like give you updates. So it's kind of neat. So, Am I biased? Maybe the Weather Channel is a direct competitor to Fox, but that's why it makes me make sure that I remind everybody, in our newsroom, don't call these things Winter Storm Uri, because it's a bunch of BS. So let's take a look at the forecast here for Thanksgiving, guys. So yeah, exciting. We love Thanksgiving. I love the Thanksgiving holiday because of the fact that it is a big football day, big football day. And I love watching football, pro more than college, but I watch college too, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But so right now, what I'm using is a website from the College of DuPage, which is this is a great page. There's a lot of college websites that have really nice model output because they purchase the data for their students, and a lot of the students will work on this, and so it's great. So this is the European computer model outlook, and it begins as we take a look ahead at the day today. It's showing storms mostly passing off to our north. And then here comes the rain on tonight, potentially tonight. So let's see. This exact time here is, hold on just a second. This is 21Z today. So this is basically looking at mid to late this afternoon with storms to the north of Houston. And then that passes us by. We get very windy behind it. Now you see all these black lines that are real close together. Those are called isobars. They're lines of equal pressure. And so you have higher pressure on this side of the screen. Sorry, it's hard. Higher pressure over there, then lower pressure toward the Gulf. And then in between, when they're packed close together, we call that a tight pressure gradient. And so you're going to have some gusty winds heading into tomorrow, Tuesday, and early Wednesday. And then everything kind of clears out. Wednesday morning does look chilly. And then as we head toward Thursday, this run of the Euro doesn't go out that far, but we start to see some rain moving in from the coastline. Now, if we switch this over to the GFS, which is the American model, it's pretty similar, but then here heading into Thanksgiving here, it's showing some of the blue, some of the green. Now, on this particular map, this doesn't match the color table that we show on our graphics, but there is a legend at the bottom. And so the green is between 1/10 of an inch and basically 1/4 of an inch of rainfall. This is rainfall totals. So during a 3-hour time period, it's showing like 1/10 of an inch. So nothing super heavy, but it's going to probably bring some cloud cover and some at least scattered showers to our area coming up on Thanksgiving. As far as temperatures are concerned, I think we probably are looking at most likely temperatures stuck in the 50s and 60s. Let's see, what are we looking at? Surface temperature. So here's what the GFS is showing us for surface temperatures on Thanksgiving. And yeah, it kind of shows us here stuck in the 50s, 60s. It's going to be cool because we just don't have that much in the way of sunshine coming in. So whenever we don't have sun and you have, rain and cool air already in place, obviously you're not going to warm up very much. So heading into the day on Thanksgiving, very likely at this point, it looks like, as warm as we're going to get is probably the 60s. Some places could potentially be stuck in the 50s. But the forecast has been frustratingly inconsistent from our 3 primary computer models that we use for this several days forecast, which is the GFS American model, the European model, which has a fancy name, the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, or ECMWF, and then the Canadian model, which is basically the Canadian Weather Service, or their version of the Weather Service. They've all been wavering back and forth on rain for Thanksgiving, but it does look like at a very minimum, we're going to have rain in the Gulf of Mexico and sort of a low skirting by the coastline. So that's coming up here for this Thursday. So anyway, I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. It's going to be, I got to work all week, which is fine. It's other folks getting some time off. We do have our fill-in meteorologist who's great, who's going to be working coming up for this weekend. That's Nathan Moore. You're going to see him on Saturday and Sunday nights for the next 3 weeks, I think. He's a great guy. He's an aviation meteorologist. He forecasts for airplanes and flights, and definitely knows what he's doing. So you can trust his forecast. He'll be around for 3 weeks. And then at the end of the month, I don't think the announcement has been made officially yet, but as I mentioned last week, we do have a new meteorologist coming in, and she is going to be wonderful. And you'll get to meet her just in time for Christmas. So we'll look forward to that. So anyway, thanks for joining me here for this Mondays with Mike. Remember, Winter Storm Uri is not a thing. It's not Uri. Not Uri. Wasn't called Uri. Shout out to my mom and Neil down in Florida, and thank you for the girls' birthday presents. My daughters, so they got gift cards from my brother and my mom, and some of them were to Walmart, and so they came home with. Well, my Anne Marie came home with an espresso machine, a cappuccino machine. So, and she brought it into her room, and we're like, child, I don't know if I want you to have an espresso cappuccino machine in your room, but that's what she wants. They love that kind of stuff, and it's better than going to Starbucks every day, right? So I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving once again, and thanks for joining me here for Mondays with Mike.